Welcome back, everybody, to the Golden Blab. This is somehow episode 7. We have not gotten canceled yet. This is not Adam Kramer. This is Kevin Lindsay, and beside me, virtually, is Andy Kuhlman, our director of Esports. Adam is on a well-deserved vacation with everyone's favorite mouse and the family down in Florida. So we could not let this go without an episode. We wanted to keep the streak going as long as we can with the Power Events Golden Tee National Tour event coming up in a few weeks in St. Louis, and then the World Championship for both Golden Tee Arcade and Golden Tee Mobile coming up. Figured it was a perfect opportunity to sit down and talk to Andy. Andy, coming up on your 5-year anniversary right around the time of the 2024 World Championships. Thanks for joining me. How's it going?
Oh, it's going pretty good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to do the podcast. And the 5 years flies by. I was just in the office the other day and I was like, oh, I think I'm coming up on year 3. And you're like, no, my friend. This is year 5. And I'm like, oh, has it really been that long? Okay.
Well, you've had an interesting journey here, to say the least.
I definitely have. So I got hired on 2 days before the Worlds at the Orleans. Was the last year we did it at the Orleans. And, we were right, a couple months before releasing Golden Tee Mobile. So I definitely got thrown, right into the fire and was hardened by the experiences. But no, it was good, getting in, seeing what the standard was, for the World Championship, and all the cool plans that we had for mobile. It was a very unique time to come into the company, but I think I've definitely learned a lot in my 5 years with IT.
Yeah, I mean, for you, I remember when you first came in, we were having conversations walking through the Orleans, and I was just, all right, I want Andy. Andy seems like a solid guy from everything I've saw on the resume and heard. Want to make sure we keep him here, so I just shot it to you straight with, everything that we do. That the production we did for Golden Tee's 30th anniversary in 2019. We hired a major production company to take that on because we were doing the 30-minute ESPN, the Ocho, TV show. And so, it was you, Sean McMenemy. I helped a little bit here and there, but you guys really took on the brunt of, okay, we have 3 days of a broadcast. Let's crunch it down into 30 minutes. Let's get all the highlights. Let's get, Stenmark's second World Championship victory in there, like all the drama of, potentially having, Jared Decker, a newcomer to Golden Tee at the time, winning the World Championship, and then just, taking all that and condensing it down into 30 minutes is not an easy feat, period, much less when it's something, new to you, because obviously the way Golden Tee does esports is a little bit different than, what you've done in the past. But, before we get to the ESPN of it all, and even what we're doing now for Golden Tee's 35th and Golden Tee Mobile, let's go back and talk, your history and how you ended up, becoming director of esports with IT back in the day.
Sure. Yeah. So I've got a pretty interesting history in the wild world of esports. At one point in time, I was a professional Halo player on the MLG circuit. This was a long time ago. I want to say 2005 or 6 until about 2010 or 2011. I was sponsored by a company called Geeker Gaming. We were ranked in the top 20 teams in the world out of 200 plus teams that would show up to compete at these events. And that was my original plan in life. I was going to be a professional gamer. I was going to make all this money. My first real summer on the tour when I was sponsored, I made $13,000 myself in the span of a summer. So as a 19, 20-year-old kid, you get that kind of money. You think that you're living large. You think you got it all figured out. Whatever the parents got to say, throw that under the rug. I'm going to continue on this lifestyle till I'm a millionaire. And then winter hit, and there was 6 months of no events as it was the off season for MLG. And I, kind of realized that I have to kind of store the nuts away for winter like a squirrel. And then eventually they took it off the circuit. And when they took Halo off the MLG circuit, I kind of realized, I'm, early 20s. I don't have a lot of experience in anything or a trade. But I realized that I really liked that world.
The other thing too, like it's not, this was 2005, 2006, like you're saying. So there's not the opportunity to just go on YouTube and Twitch and stream your gaming session as easily as you can go and do now. So that's tough
100%.
too, because that could, if that was the world we lived in back then, I think both for you and even Golden Tee, like those things might look a lot different. And so that is something, it's funny. I think back on even when I was, high school and college and how much we gamed and all that stuff like that. It's like, even just trying to record your gameplay back then was so difficult. And now there's, you open up your laptop, you plug in a couple of HDMIs with a capture card and you're good to go. It's crazy to think about that jump in technology just over the last, 10, 15 years.
Yeah, times have really changed. So back in those days, it was actually known as Justin TV, not Twitch TV. And I did stream to it using it was either a Matrox or an Elgato capture card. And I had to go, there's the red, yellow, white composite cables that came out of the Xbox at that point in time. I had to go from that into a piece of hardware and then have a second box to basically de-embed that and bring it into a laptop. And I did stream on Twitch before it was Justin TV, but there was no memberships, there was no donations. It wasn't monetized. It was just people playing games and other people watching. For those of you watching, you might have heard of a streamer named Ninja before. Around this time, he was getting 500 or 600 concurrent viewers. He did start off in the Halo world. And my team knocked him into the losers bracket at NGL Cincinnati 2008, I want to say it was. So he's been a big deal in that community and a big deal to the rest of the world ever since. And, I was knocking him into the losers bracket, before I even had a full grown beard.
That's like me saying I've beaten like Evan Gossett and Andy Haas a game or two in Golden Tee over the years, like compared to the countless times he kicked my ass. People forget about where you kind of came from, where those guys came from. They weren't always massively popular. They put in a lot of work and dedicated their lives to build, the millions upon millions of subscribers they have now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just interesting kind of seeing that world develop. And a lot of my old Halo buddies who are still trying to make it big, trying to support themselves, their families just by playing Halo. I was lucky to have some opportunity with Geeker Gaming to start doing some live event stuff. So one of the first events I ever got flown out to work was Evo 2011 or 12, I want to say. It's been so long. And I pretty much just hauled Xboxes and PlayStations and monitors and set them up for 16 hours straight. Whether or not I got fed was a hit or miss. But back in those days when esports was blooming, there was no budget, there was no money, there was, everybody just, putting in their efforts to try to make the event happen. So I started off kind of on a fly me in, put me up, feed me if you can, please feed me, I'm hungry, and just working my butt off. Yeah, right. Well, no, Gold Tee feeds me very well, as you could see. I have no issues with the food prep. But yeah, we did kind of like event setup and logistics for, I want to say, almost a year and a half until Twitch, Justin TV became Twitch. Twitch started using money, to help build live events. The first time I ever worked on staging was Smash Brothers tournament at PAX, Penny Arcade Expo, and that was my first taste of the stage, my first taste of the cameras, the production behind it. I really wanted to be like an on-camera personality talking about the games. But, at the end of the day, I just wasn't quite as charismatic as someone like Adam Kramer. And, that's how it goes.
Hey, now
I pretty much just worked my way up.
You jump on there and do commentary.
Sure. Hey, you know what? This past weekend at Whitney City Showdown, I put in a little bit more time than I wanted to. I'm gonna close my shade here. I'm getting kind of blown out with the light. I get the lighting set up perfectly, and next thing you know, the sun comes out, and all of a sudden I look like I'm turning into a ghost. It's just like any live event for Golden Tee. Everything seems good. The broadcast is going. Then all of a sudden the cable gets kicked or
tripped down.
Power flickers off, and mild panic sets in.
That's all right. See, we won't even cut that. We'll leave it because it's. I appreciate you say that because we've gone through it personally at Golden Tee tournaments, and I'm sure you've gone through it countless number of times at events. There's stuff always outside of your control, whether it's a cable is too short and it's a little snug and somebody catches it, or the power goes out because of whatever reason, or there's storms, or the internet drops. Oh, guess what?
Yep.
The internet might drop for a second and a half, but your stream's gone, and now you got to run everything right back. So,
That's
how
right.
when you were working shows like PAX and really starting to get in the industry, was that kind of the point where you were like, okay, I really enjoy the production aspect of it. Like, I think I can use my, what you've done as an esports player and also behind the scenes and kind of build yourself up that way. Was that always the plan for you?
Yeah, it wasn't always the plan. I initially wanted to be a player, and then I wanted to be kind of on camera talent. But the industry wasn't really developed enough at the time to accept, a lot of wide scoped positions for on camera talent. So I eventually just kind of learned I really liked events themselves. The broadcast aspect, it felt really cool to me getting involved in that. And I just kind of worked my way up from the floor, setting up consoles, to the stage, setting up the lights, the trussing. And finally, I started getting involved in the production side of things. And, the first time I was able to actually direct cameras or produce a stream, that's when I was like, okay, this feels almost like competitive to me. When I was much younger, I was a baseball player and a pitcher. I really loved that competitive aspect of it and the pressure to perform. And I felt that same pressure, with live events. And sometimes the pressure is a little more than I would like to handle. I've done events with EA where the producer of content for EA, the EP, has come up to me after the broadcast with a microphone in his hand and says, well, he looks at all of production and says, okay, whose butt is this microphone going up? And I'm like, the reason that happened is because we had an interview spot that was supposed to happen. The wireless base station that we dropped was in the proper spot. And then at the last minute, they called an audible and wanted this guy to be on the floor in another room. And when he went to talk, of course, there was no audio because it wasn't in range of the base station. So, so there's definitely there's a lot of pressure with executing these events. A lot of love and cares goes into building these out. And there's a lot of emotions at stake, the just not even just from the developer side, but from the player side as well. You guys are out there playing, you have a certain level of expectation for Worlds. Part of my job is to ensure that those expectations are met and surpassed. And, one of the
Within
more
the
proud
budget.
events that I've worked was Westgate. We talked a minute ago about having issues, having to pivot. Here was a fun one. When we did the Westgate, I had a call with their rigging team, their safety team. We did a whole diagram of the way that we were going to hang trussing and lighting from the ceilings, the way that we were going to set up the stage. And then when we got on site, we discovered that the places that we were going to rig from were not safe, and we could not rig from them, even though their team had kind of approved the build. So, we had this long rectangular kind of room, and instead of having it stretched out the way that we had built it, we turned the build. So the stage, the production was all kind of on this short throw. And it just made things so rough. But we ended up having a pretty awesome event, all things considered. I still look at pictures from the Westgate, and I get proud seeing the, what the kind of show that we put on.
Well, with the Westgate too, that was early 2022. So that was outside of the smaller Mobile Worlds event that we did the previous summer in 21. That was the first major event out of COVID. Unfortunately, we weren't able to go back to the Orleans like we originally planned. And it's not the Orleans fault. It's just a lot of the partnerships and relationships that we had and countless other companies had with event spaces, those event spaces nearly got killed in COVID, and a lot of them did. So they needed to make money. So, the partnership of, hey, like, we'll give you the space and then we'll just make money on the food and beverage. We couldn't live in that, that planet anymore. So even with that, we had to pivot and, incredible technologies through our relationship at the Amusement Expo, had a relationship to the Westgate. And so we did that. And yeah, Andy, and that was the first combined arcade and mobile event too. So you weren't just setting up, 20 plus arcade games or running to the local Home Depot like I did to get network cable because we ran out, things like that. But you're also setting up for, okay, well, the Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday of it all is these arcade machines. We're running HDMI, but the days before that, we've got to get these iPads and these rigs set up to stream, for mobile worlds. And I think people don't realize like how much work really goes into it, because I will speak for you and say that like your budget for these events is not like unlimited, because these world championships, especially with the prize pool for both of them, are very expensive to put on. And so, we have to live within, a realistic budget of, your production personnel, the IT personnel, all that stuff. So, your job to me is more impressive because of just some of the constraints you had to work with, especially in those early years, right outside of COVID, where, the company took a big hit too.
Yep, absolutely. And those were tough times too, because not only did IT have connections in the Vegas space, but I had been doing events for, 4 or 5 years in Las Vegas, had my own connections. And half those people, when I'd reach out to them, they'd say, we're not accepting events for the next year. And it doesn't make sense to me. How can you operate as a business without doing any events? So a lot of them just
those conversations.
They just closed their doors to public events and said, unless you're a reoccurring event, we trim back our staffing. We're, kind of minimal hands on deck, skeleton crew type operations. And it changed a lot of the capabilities that we had. So, it was kind of frustrating. A lot of the relationships that I built in Vegas, whether it be, with the Poker Go studios, the World Series of Poker guys, the other gaming studios like eStars, the Luxor Arena, at one point in time, we could have ran our event at the Luxor Arena for little to no cost. And, post-COVID, those numbers just became egregious. We're like, I've had quotes of $70,000, $80,000 for a 3-day weekend, which is outrageous when you consider that, our guys are going to be getting food and beverage. There's going to be heads in beds, booking the rooms. There's going to be engagement, press, exposure, marketing, all these sort of things leading up to it. But it just doesn't move the needle for them like giant stacks of money do. And that's unfortunately just kind of the harsh reality of what we've had to work with. I've worked a lot of major events and had similar budget constraints my whole career. So, you look at Evo, it's the biggest fighting game competition in the entire world. They don't have that great of a budget for as large as their event is. I've done I ran Mobile Masters for Amazon. That's another one. The price of the venue rental at a place like Luxor would price them out of the event instantly. And this is Amazon we're talking about. Even the Pokemon company, I did the Pokemon National and World Championships a few years back in San Francisco. And, it was a very small personal venue, and that was just kind of the constraints that we had to operate with. And, there's definitely a lot of the production side that people don't see. A lot of guys know how to stream. They got an Elgato. You just tap the HDMI into it, feed it right into your laptop, and boom, there's your game feed right there. You got a USB camera and microphone set up on your laptop, and you got a full encompassing stream. But you got to consider when we do these live events, we're tapping 2 or 3 setups, and we have 2 or 3 cameras tied to each setup, a caster cam. That's 6 or 7 inputs right off the bat. It's exactly. So it's not even possible to do with an Elgato at a certain point. So, it's been interesting seeing the development of the IT stream rig over the years as well. And that's something that you've been hands-on with me a couple times at a couple events, trying to figure out, the hurdles with the hardware that we have and figuring out how to move forward.
There's nothing worse than having the feeling of wanting to snap a $2,000 brand new laptop in half like I had this past weekend. But we were able to make it work. We won't get into it. Everything is well. Damn NVIDIA drivers coming out with updates like 2 days before we go to use this new laptop. But
That's how it
talking about
goes.
it is, but talking about like the IT streams, whether it's, the national tour events or even some of the Golden Tee mobile events that the players have been putting on like Windy City, talk to me about the challenges and how you navigate those, because, the first non-world championship event, or actually really the first IT event that you were in charge of the production, was the NIV in the 2019 October. And that
Yep.
is, for those of you who have not been to that tournament before its sunset a few years ago, it is Virginia. It's downtown. It's, big brick walls. There's a lot of space, but there's really not a lot of space because it's taken up, and, having to run cabling here and there. Like, we made it work, but every location is different. You have now granted, in the 2024 circuit, and even the last couple of years, Steve Sobel, Paige Gossett, Russ Layton, those guys at Power Events, they've built such a good relationship with these locations. So the locations we have right now are pretty great, and there's a lot of space. But even like when we had to pivot in Wisconsin in early March, because your streaming rig that we were using for so many years had some essentially stuff break on it, we were pivoting to my desktop from the office because we were so close to it. And you have to navigate, and there's only so many expectations that you can realistically meet, because again, like we were just saying, an Elgato or an AverMedia capture card is great for a single little stream in your home office or your home gaming system. It's not really conducive for an event that we put on with the national tour. And so you have to sometimes live in those worlds where you pivot. Sometimes it turns out great. Sometimes there's always room for improvement when you're dealing with that. But talk to me over the last 5 years of, where we started, both from the location standpoint and just the tech standpoint, and to where we're at now and what people can expect with the 2024 World Championship in a few months.
Yeah. Starting off with NIV being the first real broadcast for myself was really interesting to see. Like you said, it's a very, not cramped, but it's a very personal space. And I think myself and PJ were operating off a table that was about this wide, so having our setup on that was a little bit rough, but it was such a cool event to see. And it was a really good way to get kicked off with Golden Tee. And one of the things I love about NIV is, this was back before Amazon had fully acquired Twitch. I still had some pretty good connections at Twitch. I actually, my team was the first contractors that Twitch ever hired for live events. So, I developed some really strong relationships, was very close personal friends with the first engineer ever brought on at Twitch. And we were actually able to get front page coverage on Twitch for that weekend. I think we, reached probably 20 or 30,000 unique people just in those couple of hours of front page landing time that we had. So it was really cool to see. And I was hoping that this was something I was going to regularly provide. But Amazon taking over Twitch, all of a sudden it became about the dollar bills and less about the community growth, which was, unfortunate to see, but something that does happen from time to time in esports. And, over time, developing our rig, I think we're on our third streaming setup at this point. The first streaming setup that we had, I think it was 4 or 5 events into the tour after NIV, and someone at TSA, when I had shipped my bag, had taken a pair of like tin snips or pliers or something, and they cut the gate on the back of my PC itself. And they pulled out my capture card. They pulled out my graphics card, and it's like $2,600 disappeared out of my PC when I landed in Vegas. And I saw it come down the belt conveyor for the luggage, and there was no back on it. The metal was all bent back out of it. And I said, oh no, this is a bad time. And the great thing about airlines is if you have electronics that are damaged, they don't care. They say, oh, you should have carried that on with you. Well, my whole stream rig is something I should carry on with me, but it's, 50 pounds and it won't fit in an overhead compartment. So there was no real, at the time, there was no real good answer other than we need to get a different case, something without butterfly latches, something that could be mounted deep within foam. We pivoted to a Pelican case that, was rated basically the highest, it gave one of the best consumer rating Pelican cases. And that lasted for us for a couple of years up until this previous event in Wisconsin. On the inside of my PC, I have a 1 terabyte hard drive that's booted, or attached to this little inside T looking gate. And it had just kind of slowly wiggled free until it came loose. And then the cable came off. And once the cable came off, that terabyte hard drive bounced all over the inside of the PC. It broke pins off my motherboard. It damaged my capture card. I think the only thing that was unscathed was my graphics card. And, that's not going to be as much use on the streaming as something like a capture card. So, like you said, we're able to pivot off of your office setup with an Elgato. We brought one feed, one camera in. We weren't even able to have caster cams for that event. And, I think it was just it was time for us to figure out, X amount of years have passed. Let's take a look at technology and see how we can streamline this build and avoid having to replace half a PC and half the production gear every year and a half or so. The first hurdle that we hit was the PGA cabinets come out in 4K. An 8-input capture card with Blackmagic is generation locked at 1080. So you have to figure out a way to down convert that signal from 4K to 1080 to even ingest it. And in the process, it goes through 2 little pieces of hardware to convert it, and it clips our audio. So we can't have any game sounds. The whole build itself was kind of subpar, and we took the opportunity to look at what we need for the future. I found a device called a Sonnet box that it's just a square piece of metal that you can pop capture cards into and then thunderbolt them to a laptop, and it will send you all your feeds simultaneously. So we looked at implementing that at the Windy City Showdown in Chicago. I was able to physically repair my capture card, had to mount some of the fans back onto the processor chips, and it still worked. So, we basically eliminated the PC part of the build, 50 plus pounds of gear out the window, and we're now running everything off the Sonnet box and a very, very beefy laptop with a 4070 graphics card, i9, all that good stuff. And we also upgraded, we added on another capture card, the Intensity Pro by Blackmagic, and this is an HDMI input capture card that scales up to 4K. So in St. Louis, in Worlds, and the rest of the events throughout the year, any Golden Tee live broadcast events, we should get that clean 4K HDMI ingest, and we don't have to convert the signal at all. So we should get clean game audio. So moving forward at broadcasts on the tour, at Worlds, you guys are going to notice, a lower background noise of the in-game sounds itself. And, we're just trying to continue to level up our production as we go.
Well, that's great, Andy. Minus the fact that now you've set expectations so high that when somebody doesn't hear the game commentary or the sound effects to the extent that they want, you're going to flood us with YouTube comments of complaints. But honestly, though, it's been a lot of work, and we've had something in the budget the last couple of years, and we just haven't really needed to use it. When it comes to replacing hardware. So, like you said, it's kind of a blessing in disguise. Especially for Golden Tee's 35th, wanting to take whatever steps we can to take our, move the broadcast to the next level. We're many moons away from, anybody streaming really in 4K, but having a powerful laptop, we have more ability to record those feeds, and have a better shelf life for those future broadcasts. So they're not just, sitting in 720. Or if you have something like last year in Nashville where Luna and Haas went back-to-back aces on 18 of neon kind of thing, we have like that raw quality. And, that leads us to, hey, we tested this out in Windy City, jumped through a few hurdles with the actual, NVIDIA drivers and things like that. But now we've got St. Louis coming up here in just a few weeks. May 2nd through May 5th down in Maryland Heights, Missouri. not too far from
Yep.
St. Louis. And the comedy club is an interesting one because when we went to this location last year, that's the newest location we have through the Power Events GT Tour. We weren't sure what to expect because you have two very distinctly different and separate rooms. When it comes to spacing out players, hearing Sobel call the qualifiers, things like that. But
Sure.
this will be a good test for us because it's, like you said, 4K PGA Tour cabinets. We can pull in 4K feeds through HDMI.
Yep.
We've got more opportunity, for more camera feeds. We're looking into some wireless, gear that, can
Solutions.
feed us. So that's exactly it. So as you and I, and a lot more you these days than me, but we're going through the thick of it and prepping for Worlds too. So, talk to us a little bit about, just the general differences between a, national Golden Tee Tour event and, something as big as the World Championship, much less an event where we're combining two different, events together with mobile and arcade.
Yeah, it's always interesting, when Worlds gets involved, there's always unforeseen hurdles, a great one last year when we got on site at Notoriety, going to ingest the signals, knowing that my capture card is gen locked at 1080, we had to find a solution quick. And, we go look online and there, Decimators, which is a scaling device, has been on back order since 2022, and some of these other pieces of hardware, sometimes you guys will say, oh, why don't you just buy a backup? Sometimes there's no backups for sale for over a year. And at that point in time, we need to find a totally different solution. And a lot of times it involves drastically changing our entire build, which is what we've done in Windy City, I think definitely for the better. But yeah, moving into Windy City, I'm also going to be filming Road to Worlds at Windy City. It's another thing I do for the company. I interview all the players. I put out basically half-hour long specials, kind of like the precursor to the ESPN video we talked about earlier. Leading up to the event, talking to some of the best players, seeing how they feel about their chances going to the event, what their expectations are, and the community as a whole. That's one thing I really try to, the mobile guys will say this a little bit more than the arcade side, but I do my absolute best to do right by the community, doesn't matter if it's on the stream, mobile qualifying, something with a sales package, all these sort of things. Anybody who's watching, if you have ideas, suggestions, feel free to shoot me a message anytime. If you hit a shot of the week, feel free to ship it over my way as well.
Tag Andy. I do those. Don't tag Adam or Kevin.
That's right.
They're probably not going to get seen as.
That's right. That's right. Because I'm the guy who's going to be locking those in. Whereas Adam and Kevin, they have other things going on. If you tag them, you're less likely to get your shot seen as if you just tag me.
I feel like more people are going to tag Adam and I now just because of this podcast, which, it is what it is. But no, that's another piece of it too with the community aspect because, what the mobile players want and need and what the arcade players want and need or what they think they want and need are very different at times. And that's where kind of, not just on the esports side, but where you really have kind of hit a stride is kind of being not like a middleman, but like you've been able to kind of help jump in between like Adam and I and some of the community stuff and really help kind of filter a lot of that stuff, filter it out or, help. You've got the tools now to help a lot of these players with what it is, whether it's shots of the week or, hey, QA, somebody reports this bug, this, that, and the other. And that's where I want to make sure that people give you, credit for too, because, the videos that you put together, the footage that you're going to record at Missouri, or, the stuff we'll shoot at Worlds and the rest of the national tour for next year's Worlds. I mean, there's a lot. And even just in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of players, step up their game and really, start hitting the top fours. So now your job's gotten a little bit harder because it's not just the Andy Haas's and the Evan Gossets and like these guys,
right,
the Paul Talos that you're just recording new videos on. You've got somebody like Sean Gervais who after many years,
absolutely,
kind of, he's gotten tired of being in that top 8, top 4 spot. And he's really, making it his own. Kevin O'Connor coming back after a couple of years, I believe was in Florida and taking a higher spot than he normally, I think even himself would say that, whether
It
it's
was an awesome performance.
No, and it's fun because the videos that you and I do, and the stuff that we do for the community, it makes it a little bit harder, just so to speak, because now you have more players that you got to focus on. You got to try to shoot video, in between running production and Sean, working on social media and me doing every other thing, at these tournaments and stuff. But it's something that's fun. And I know even last year at the St. Louis event, when you were recording the Road to Worlds footage, it was funny to see because you were like, hey, PJ's got production down. I can step away and shoot these videos. And you get to enjoy a different side of that you probably don't, you don't do as much because you're always kind of locked in behind that production setup.
Yeah. It's definitely cool getting my hands on doing a little, quote unquote field producing at these events, pulling the players aside for, winter interviews, all that sort of thing. And it's kind of widened my scope of events. You asked me a little bit ago, what goes into a regular event versus what goes into Worlds. Typically leading up to the event, we have a whole social schedule of what we're posting when. We do live wire articles on, either someone from PEGT or, whoever won the previous event. Be on the lookout for a page article coming up in the near future as well. And we've got those videos, the trailer videos. One thing that's interesting for me is I had very minimal editing capabilities when I first came on with the company. And IT has really given me a chance to develop and grow and utilize that skill set. The first video I was ever involved with was the ESPN special. But I was essentially producing over Sean McMenamin's shoulder as he did the edits. I gave him a giant laundry list of timestamps. This goes here, this goes here, this goes here. But starting to get the capabilities to do it myself. And, in particular, this next St. Louis trailer, I put a couple extra hours in than I normally would to kind of learn, some new skill sets. And I think the St. Louis trailer is possibly one of the best event trailers I've done yet for the company. So I'm really excited for that to roll out and be live to all of you guys. So yeah, just leading into the event, I have all these little items, I've got to knock out. And then once we go live, you got the live broadcast, constantly updating the titles, the nameplates, occasionally having to update the scenes or change, if something crazy is happening, like there's a speck on the trackball, we need to build a completely new scene that is literally just a close-up of that zoomed-in trackball so we could cut in on it while they're messing with it. It makes it funnier, adjusting to the environment of the broadcast itself, what people are liking, along with the content that I'm producing for the next event, for Worlds, whatever. So that's really, kind of widened my plate for these live events. Going into Worlds is something totally different. You've seen probably more spreadsheets for me than you care to remember. But for every event, I send a broadcast master Excel sheet, and there's 7 or 8 different tabs across the bottom of it, 200 lines of the run of show. Like, okay, we open with the starting soon, fade to, event hype package, fade to caster camera, identify casters with lower thirds, fade to the player camera, merge that to the in-game overlay. And that's just kind of just the first 35 seconds of the live broadcast. Not to mention who we're booking for the event. I'm very proud of our Worlds team. The engineer that we bring on, a guy named James Lena, he is the engineer for the World Series of Poker. They actually created a role for this guy called technical producer. So basically, because most engineers, once they get everything go, they walk away off set and their job is done. James, they gave the producer title so he could stay on for the whole weekend. So if things go wrong, he is there. He can help fix the situations. And he saved us pretty strongly at Worlds this past year with the 4K issue. We look to see, okay, what kind of converters can we use? We look and see, these are on back order for the last 2 years. He says, I'll just run over to the Poker Go warehouse. I'll grab you 3 and I'll be back in an hour. And that's just the world he lives in, and it's great to have him on the team. Our director of photography, Damian Lux, somebody who's done international broadcasts and trusted by many different studios, the Poker Go studio, the eStars studio, the Yu-Gi-Oh World Tour. This person is trusted to the highest extent by some of the most regular event-based companies. A lot of PJ, Pajama Pants Paul, as he's called. He's kind of a utility player, I would say. He's somebody that can help engineer. He can switch the scenes. He can increase the quality of live broadcast while it's going. He can man the broadcast while I'm out field producing these segments as well. And he's somebody that's been a necessity for us, more times than not. And he's actually getting ready to move to the Philippines in a few months. So Worlds 2024 will be the last time that a lot of you will ever see PJ, and he will be dearly missed. And finally, our lighting director, a gentleman named Dave Schulman, he's trusted by the Olympics for his lighting. And pretty much every single major show in Vegas, he's either designing or operating, the overhead lighting and what you see. What he saw at the Westgate event with Worlds, that was myself and Dave Schulman working together to try to bring the best glitz and glam lighting and effects and flutters and strobes and haze and confetti and all those sort of things. So, there's a manual element to it on staffing. There is massive organizational elements, as far as the run of show goes, the film schedule, just the times we go live, but we're also doing these other segments, these pre-recorded segments that you see later on social media. So, huge organizational element to it, making sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's dotted, along with the logistical element of making sure this gear gets to St. Louis, shipping the machines themselves. You've been a strong ally as far as sending things from the warehouse to their final location in Vegas and working with me on the different kind of ancillary items of the event. There's just so much more that goes into Worlds. The prize pool breakdowns, the additional content. We did the first ever speed run with Paul Luna in 2023. I'm looking to do something pretty cool in the same vein Saturday night with this year's Worlds as well. And just it's a whole different monster, to be honest with you. We're talking months and months of planning, hundreds of lines of spreadsheet inputs and organization, whereas we can get away with a little bit less planning and staffing on the national tour, since we've gone through these events many times. There is a sort of rinse and repeat element to it, but every event is different. We have different challenges, different interviews, different players, different broadcast setups. This happens from time to time. There's just so much that goes into it. And we really do our best to deliver the best event we can to you guys, the players.
No, I appreciate that, Andy. And just looking at the calendar, it makes me go, oh shit, because we're, about 2 months and a little over a week away from the World Championship. June 27th, June 30th in Las Vegas at the Palms. So if you haven't qualified yet, by the time you're seeing this on Friday, they should be a commercial money shot qualifier, a couple of home money shot qualifiers coming up. And then if you don't have a spot, just fly to Vegas. Last chance target rush. We're going to have at least 2 spots open. Anybody that drops out, in May or can't make it for a variety of reasons, those spots are going to open up. So you may have a strong feeling about target rush. It may not be the same as closest to the pin for a lot of you, but when it comes to getting into that World Championship, to earn that spot, if you haven't done it already, it's a pretty good opportunity, and I would not want you to miss it. Andy, I appreciate the time. Of course, your job, my job, a lot of our jobs, never end when it comes to the production of planning. So I appreciate you taking the time to join me on the podcast this week, and looking forward to seeing how things go with us in St. Louis as we wrap up for the World Championship.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to be here. Thanks everybody for listening. I know I'm not quite as charismatic and handsome as Adam Kramer, but hopefully this podcast was an enjoyable listen. And I just kind of wanted to reiterate, My first and foremost focus is definitely the community. Anytime you guys have suggestions or comments, concerns, feel free to shoot me that message on Facebook. And I'll do my best to make sure that I get, your needs, your concerns addressed in some form. And I really hope to continue to be a buffer for the players, for both sides, arcade and mobile. And I just really appreciate you having me on here, the time you took as well. So just wanted to say thank you to everybody.
No, absolutely. All right, for Adam Kramer, for Mickey Mouse, for myself, thanks Andy Kuhlman for joining us. This is episode 7 of the Golden Blab Podcast. We'll see you guys next time.